Our next speaker, if you turn your attention to the agenda, happens to be the Assistant Deputy Minister of Forest, Lands and Natural Resources. The gentleman's name is Tom Jensen, and Tom is here and raring to go. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Tom Jensen.
Well, thanks very much, Peter. Was there a short guy up here earlier? You know, I was, Reynold and I were talking at one of the breaks, and, you know, when we were listening to Pat Byrne talk about sleep, and when we were listening to Dr. Art Hister talk about, you know, fitness and health and so on, you tend to start to personalize that discussion in your own mind almost immediately, at least I do. And when I was thinking about the discussion around sleep, you know, the key of having, I think, 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night is the start, and that's a good start, and that's what you need to do. Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm here to declare that I consistently get 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Now, some of my colleagues out there, Otto Schulte, Jim Hackett, Don Demens, they now know that I can't use the lack of sleep as an excuse for the fact that sometimes when they're hammering away at me on tenures and pricing and those kinds of issues, that I can't say that my lack of concentration or my slowness to react to some of their great ideas is a function of the fact that I don't get enough sleep. But on a more serious note, I was thinking about sleep as well, and I spent about 10 years, up until about 2 years ago when I stood down, I spent about 10 years in the Coast Guard Auxiliary working out of the Victoria Harbour with Unit 35 there. And I was crew for a while and became a coxswain. I did about, I guess, 35 or 40 missions off Victoria Harbour. And I was thinking about this sleep thing again, and I was thinking about concentration, reaction time. And there, on a number of occasions, of course, we'd be on a 24/7 pager, and we'd get called out 2 o'clock in the morning. We'd crawl out of bed, we'd drive our vehicles down to the base, hop on an 8-meter rigid hull inflatable with two 225-horse Yamahas in the back, off into the night in the 25-knot wind. And I was thinking, you know, I don't think any of us were really at our peak. Certainly our navigator wouldn't have been. So you think about that, and you think about that in the context of safety and personal. You know, I find myself in a personal circumstance where, yeah, you know, there I was out there expecting to have to be on peak performance, people that were responsible, whose safety I was more or less responsible for, and right at a point where I was probably not very, I don't know what the watch would have said, but maybe what it was, I around a 30 or 40% on that. So it's really interesting to listen to that and start to personalize some of that and internalize that into your own experience. And Dr. Wright, I was interested, and I've heard you. I think you're here today. They said you were going to be staying, but I've heard you today, and I've watched you lots on Global in the morning, and I'd love for you to take that approach more on TV, a little bit more colorful language, some of those colorful examples you used, and just so that we can all watch Steve Darling's face drop. I think if you can just try that once, I think that would be fantastic. And I think they'd give you that one chance and they'd bring you back for further shows, but just a thought. Anyway, let me get a little bit more serious. First, I want to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to address the conference. I was here last year, spent the day at the conference. I thought it was a very good conference last year, and I'm feeling the same thing this year in terms of what I've heard so far. You know, I want to first bring greetings from Minister Thompson, my Minister of Forest, Lands and Natural Resource Operations. I do want to tell you that for safety, not just in the forest sector, but the natural resource sector, is very top of mind for Minister Thompson. You know, he's very alive to when you get a media item on a fatality or injury. He's alive to the trends and the rates, very concerned about it. And when he does go out and speak to industry groups, other groups, he does usually give a message about that concern And he almost always challenges us, both in government and industry, to continue to the efforts that we've been taking to improve safety, but to continue to do them and be ever vigilant about that. So again, greetings from Minister Thompson. So again, he challenges industry, but he also realizes that government obviously has a very important role to play in terms of sector safety. I mean, we have to keep our own employees safe, which is obvious. We have to engage with and support and reinforce safe practice in industry. And there are some ways that we can actually do that I'm going to talk about later. So I want to say that we can't stand on the sidelines as government, and I think it's fair to say that we're not standing on the sidelines. So today, what I want to do is I just want to give you, take this opportunity to share with you some of the things that we've been doing in our new ministry, relatively new ministry around safety. FLNRO, Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations, was actually established in 2011, so it's a new ministry. And it was brought together by a whole bunch of different parts of other ministries, as you know, Ministry of Energy and Mines, Ministry of Forests, Ministry of Environment, and others. And today we have, as a result of that, we have something like, Tom Jackson gave me the numbers, it's 4,400 staff in FLNRO, 1,300 of which are auxiliary temporary staff, mostly in wildfire. We have 287 workplaces in 82 communities across the province. So we're a big organization with lots of reach, lots of different places. And the other thing about that is that we're not all doing the same, we're not all in the same business. Our staff are in very many different lines of business. And again, I asked Tom, because he knows the resource sector a lot better than I do, what are all the things that we're doing in terms of activities that consider to have some significant risk to them? So he gave me a list of them, I'll read them off to you. It's smoke jumping, RAP attack, wildlife relocation by air and ground transport, low-level flying and cargo slinging, fast water swimming, flood monitoring assessment, road construction and maintenance, assessing and managing contaminated sites, dam and dike safety inspection, tree falling. And even guys like me, from time to time, will go out to get in a helicopter and go out to a cut block. I was just out a few weeks ago out to a cut block, flying around in a helicopter, dropping in Rivers Inlet, dropping into cut blocks on the temporary timber landing pads and getting in and out with the rotors running. It's so a lot of us who are actually not really necessarily that experienced are also out there too. So it's really important for us to understand what the kind of system we need to put in place so that all of us are safe. Those folks that are really experienced in the resource sector and those of us who are not necessarily. Of course, we manage our own workplaces. We enter into and work on a wide range of other workplaces such as construction sites, harvesting sites, mines, agricultural operations, feedlots. We use all kinds of different equipment, vehicles, all-terrain vehicles, snow machines, boats, in non-tidal, tidal waters, power saws, all kinds of equipment as well. So, when we look at all of, and of course, we're also exposed to all kinds of weather. So when you look at all of that in terms of we're all over the place, we have all kinds of different activities, many of which are high risk, in very different kinds of climate situations. It's obviously really important for us to pay a lot of attention to safety. And I'm here to tell you that we do. When FLNR was formed, as I said a couple of years ago, one of my responsibilities was to lead the development of the safety management system. Actually, to be honest with you, I was a bit surprised that when we sat all the ADMs down and we were given our responsibilities, I got BCTS and First Nations relations and pricing and engineering and a number of things, and safety was also one of them. And I thought, well, geez, I don't really have a lot of experience in terms of safety. I'm no safety expert, but I think I know something about systems. I think I know something about government. And I actually thought, well, I was actually really quite interested and quite motivated by the fact that I was going to be taking on a new area of responsibility that I had not done so in the past. So I was very lucky also at the time. Well, the lucky part was, Tom, you're in charge of safety for the ministry, but you don't actually have any resources budget or anything like that. But you do have Tom Jackson. And so Tom, he's here, and I just want him to stand up. He's Tom. I want to acknowledge Tom. Tom is actually the real safety champion in our ministry. Without Tom, I mean, he's taught me so much, and in some ways he's kind of mentoring me through this. I kind of help him work through the senior levels of government. He really helps me understand what's going on in the safety world. So I wanted to acknowledge Tom and the work that he's been doing in our ministry. I also tease him at our leadership team meetings about whether or not he has any staffing issues, and of course he doesn't, because he doesn't have any staff. But what that means, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because what that means is that he has to work all across our ministry in all different parts of business where people in those business areas have to take responsibility and accountability for safety in the ministry. There is not a safety unit that's going to take care of that for you. Everybody has to think about how they can integrate safety and safe practice and develop a culture of safety within their business area. So I think it's a good thing. Sometimes Tom's runs a bit ragged, but at the same time, I think there's a real plus to that piece as well. So what are we doing in terms of promoting safety internally in our ministry? Well, there's no surprise here, and we're doing a lot of the things that you're doing in terms of a safety management system. We have one in place now. Tom led a cross-ministry team, as I said. We've built a safety management system that has all the elements that you would actually, as experts, would expect to see in a safety management system. So, we've got the policy statements. We have statements of roles and responsibilities, who's accountable from a senior level to supervisory to individual operational worker. Where is your responsibility? It's shared, but everybody has accountability through it. Of course, we have the joint health and safety committees that we've had for years in all ministries under WorkSafe legislation. We have that. We've also been working on I would call them special policies or guidelines on areas of really high risks. So, for example, we've got hand falling guidelines. We have a stated policy around avalanche avoidance. And we've also put together a piece which I think is a really important piece that speaks to the fact that we think as government, because we have so much activity, we generate so much activity as a contractor, as an employer, as a prime contractor under WorkSafe legislation, that we have an ability and an opportunity and a responsibility to have influence on the sector. And that's not telling the sector what to do, but it's putting in place a system where when we're contracting or we have a tenure holder with BC Timber Sales, if we're buying from a supplier, that we're doing it in such a way and monitoring progress on the work that we're contracting or what we're buying, we're doing it in such a way that we're paying attention to safety, and we're encouraging and not forcing in some cases, but at least encouraging our stakeholders, our partners, to operate safely. So there is a real opportunity for us, and we're going to continue to kind of look at how much more we can do. And I would encourage you to go to our website, have a look at it's called the Client Interaction Guide. It's very well done, very well written, but it's telling you folks how we're trying to influence the contractors and suppliers that we use to do a lot of our business. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that everybody in this room knows that we as government are working on a Natural Resource Road Act, rewriting a piece of legislation, a significant piece of legislation. There is a very important safety focus to that, basically around improving safety for workers and as you know, the increasing amount of public that's actually operating on those roads, and trying to build a legislative regime that will support a safer environment on those resource roads. I also wanted to mention that I think Peter said I could go a little bit longer than 10 minutes, and so it looks like I've taken you up on that. I also wanted to mention, I was thinking about just the mental state, whether it's from being sleep deprived or distracted because you've had some issues at home, whatever the reason, but that sort of what's your mental state when you come to work? And one of the pieces of work that we have done in our ministry, which I'm very proud of, and I'm the executive sponsor for it, is our critical incidents response. So we have a team very, very well trained team of people who, again, it's not a paid unit within the ministry. It's people who have said, I want to be somebody who's involved in responding to people who are suffering from traumatic stress disorder, and I want to have an opportunity to get trained. And so there are people who have regular jobs in the ministry who have stood up and volunteered to be part of that team. And what I guess my point in this is that when you have an incident, there's lots of folks that are affected beyond, obviously, the person who was victimized, whether injured or is a fatality. That has a huge impact on the workers, the people around them, people they worked with, their colleagues. So we have a really good trained team that can go in and respond. The Haida Gwaii earthquake was a good example, actually, where there was no fatality, there was no issue like that, but it really shook up a lot of people. When we debriefed on it, it shook up a lot of our staff and a lot of people that were living in Haida Gwaii at the time. And our guys had to go out and they had to, of course, assess roads and bridges and all that kind of stuff afterwards. But we ultimately deployed a critical incidents response team to Haida Gwaii to work with staff up there. So I just wanted to say that that's a really important piece, I think, although it's not necessarily part of the safety management system as it's written, it's a very important part of what we do as a ministry to support safety. You've seen in Don's presentation, we're very engaged with industry. I've just recently got on the board this year for the BC Forest Safety Council. Tom Jackson has been involved with the board for a number of years. He sits on a number of the committees, the program committee, the governance committee, and so on. Noel Poulin is here as well. Where's Noel? There he is there. He's as you saw on Don's presentation, he's engaged with the CHAG on the working group, and Mike Faulkner is on the steering group as the head of BC Timber Sales. So we're very cognizant of the fact that we need to be engaged with industry as a partner on safety, and we're doing our best to do that. And I should say that we're open to other invitations if they're there to get involved in other initiatives that we're not involved in and that we can contribute to and work with you on. There's, as you know, the Safe Companies certification is being revamped right now. I did want to say that we fully expect BC Test is an organization that requires safe certification, as you all know, and we fully expect that we're going to sign on to that revamped version as well. And I want you to know that we're very supportive of that. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm also becoming more and more alive to the issue of the rest of the ministry requiring safe certification. I know it's been an issue for a while now, maybe some years now. I'm not quite sure, but I know it kind of came to my. I was reminded again, if you will, the other day when the Forest Safety Ombudsman released the report, or at least that's when I saw a copy of the report, and again highlighted that BCTS requires safe certification. What about the rest of the ministry? So I will go back. I will talk to my colleagues about that. Talk to our executive and see. I want to get a little bit of the history and on that, and I will take a look at that and see where that takes us. So I will make that commitment here today to do that. Let me just finish then with just a comment on the conference. I want to extend my thanks to the organizing committee. It's been an excellent conference. Last year I came, I spent the day as well, and to me a good conference is if I come out of it and I've learned something, then it's a good conference. If I've confirmed what I knew, that's not so bad either. If I haven't learned much, well, then it's not a very good conference. Well, this one today already for me has confirmed a number of things that I've learned about safety in the sector, but it's also, there's some new things to think about. And so when Reynold was saying, we got the systems in place, we've got protocols, but we've seemed to have reached a place where we just can't move the dial anymore. So what is that about? And so it strikes me that that this conference for me, and I'm going to share this with you personally, for me, it's got me now thinking about, okay, we've done this good stuff, we have a safety management system in place, that's great. Now what do we do next? What do we have to do more? And I think we're headed in the right direction with looking at some of the things around sleep and health that have been raised by the two speakers this morning and by Reynold in his comments as he has gone through the day. So again, excuse me, Thanks to the organizing committee. Thanks for inviting me to have a few minutes to share with you what our ministry is doing around safety and thinking about opportunities to work more with you and engage more with you around safety so we can be mutually supportive on that. I'm going to be here for the rest of the day as well, and I'm open to having further discussion with you. And my challenge to the committee is for next year, make it even better than this year and give us something more to think about next year as we go down this journey of trying to improve safety in the natural resource sector and the forest sector. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. Okay, I was the short person that had this mic lower, but I'll just bend down. Okay, not every day do you have two of your bosses kind of staring at you as the day unfolds, but in this particular scenario today, that's exactly what I've had. As you well know, I was the regional manager, occupational health and safety with WorkSafe for a number of years, 16 in total. Before that, I ran a claims center. And the next gentleman that I'm going to introduce happened to be my boss when I was living and working in Richmond. And my boss, when I came to the island, is also sitting beside him. So I have the pleasure of two bosses, former bosses, that I can actually look at and wave and say hi to. And you know, it brings back a lot of very positive memories for me as far as the time that I spent at WorkSafe. Nothing bad, all good. So, with no further ado, what I would like to do is introduce a gentleman who has been with WorkSafe for a number of years, since 1994. So, you're coming up a 20-year anniversary, which is an amazing length of time considering it seemed like yesterday. Ian Munro joined WorkSafeBC as an executive director. He has now moved up in ranks to the Vice President, Employer and Industry and Worker Services with the Worker and Employer Services Division of WorkSafeBC. Much like the previous keynote speaker, Ian spent some time in governmental positions. He was the Assistant Deputy Minister, Court Services, and Assistant Deputy Minister, General Manager, and Chief Information Officer with the Liquor Distribution Branch. Ian brings a ton of information. He has been very much involved in the direction and focus of WorkSafeBC, and it's an honor to be able to introduce him and ask Ian to come up and speak a few words on behalf of WorkSafeBC. Ian.
Thanks, Peter, and good afternoon. Some people always ask when they hear that, why would you ever leave the liquor distribution branch? And that's a very good question, but talk about that at the break. I'm representing WorkSafeBC this afternoon, and with pleasure, I do want to acknowledge that Al Johnson, our Vice President of Prevention, was not able to be here. He's traveling in the States doing some research for some of our new prevention strategies. And our CEO, David Anderson, also sends his regrets. Dave has either just had his grandson or is about to have a grandson, so that's why Dave is not with us this afternoon. Working together, my sense from this morning's session and other discussions we've had with Reynold and many others over the last while is that your industry and all of the partners and players in your industry is really working together. And I think all of the things that Reynold spoke about just before lunch and earlier this morning, the component parts and taking it to a new level and the leadership part of it is all going to have impact, and it is going to move your industry forward. I did have some slides and some stats on your industry, but those have been spoken to this morning, so I've stripped those out. And I just wanted to show you one slide. Typically when WorkSafe comes to a meeting like this, we have a deck of stats and slides and trackers and whatnot. This is our overall provincial rate. So this represents an injury reduction rate from about 6, as you'll see on the left side of the scale, some years ago down to 2. We're actually at 2.34, so for every worker, every 100 workers in the province of British Columbia, 2 will have a time loss claim this year. So it's harder and harder to reduce from a base of 6 to a base of 2. So we're adjusting ourselves. We're working more closely with industries like yours. We're getting more targeted. We're getting more risk-based, and we're looking at different ways to do it. I'll give you a quick example. Healthcare. We have an injury rate in healthcare overall that is concerning to us, but when we look at long-term care, the actual injury rate in long-term care is between 9 and 10. So that's where we need to be focusing our attention with the health authorities and with the healthcare industry and getting more targeted and effective in terms of where we go and using the data to drive us to better outcomes. I'm going to share a couple of stories with you through videos, 2 videos. The first one is 5 minutes, and it's a very powerful video about an injured worker by the name of Mike Roussel, who we've been working with very closely after his serious accident as a linesman down by Cranbrook. And there are a number of sub-stories to it that I think you'll hear and feel and resonate with. And it's about the safety component, it's about his recovery, it's about the support that he received, and it's about his employer. And primarily I wanted to share it with you in the context of his employer's support for Mike after his injury. And then I have a second shorter video after that just to speak more about Mike Honeyman, the employer, and what he had to say about his experience having had a very serious workplace accident at his work site. So away we go, and if hopefully this will run and maybe the lights can be dimmed a bit. Thank you.
In 2009, I was 30 years old. Life was pretty good. I was enjoying my job. I was enjoying my family life. And then I was injured at work. I'm Mike Roussel. I'm a husband, a father of 3, and I'm an injured worker. On the day of my accident, I was a sub-foreman working for Aero Installations. Basically, we were trying to get a bucket truck in to go up a pole to change fuse for the line. And I'm pretty sure the bucket truck got stuck. And I said to the guy I was with, I'll just climb it and get it while we're out here, and then we don't have to ever come back. The guy I was working with had his back to me when it happened, so he said he just heard a big, like an arc or a big bang, I guess, and he turned around and he seen there was a big ball of fire around me. He said it felt like it lasted forever, and then he said it finally went out, and then I went unconscious.
I got a phone call. He said, I got some bad news. You know, they had to take Mike's arm off. And that was when it was like, okay, this is bad. And it was almost surreal. I couldn't believe that happened.
I remember thinking, well, he has children and he has to work, and how are we going to continue on with life if he doesn't have an arm? And you told me you were just going to skin graft his hand. And
you get the phone call later, was they had to take his leg. You just kept thinking, like, this can't be real.
The only thing I could think about was I'm not going to be able to be the same guy. I'm not going to be able to be active. I'm not going to be able to play sports. I won't be able to go back to work. You get this feeling of like, you're going to be nothing.
And I can remember walking in the room and he was just so devastated. And I would think, like, that's not Mike. That's not the Mike I was married to and who we had built a life together. So it was like we had to slowly learn together what this new Mike was going to be.
I think about a month into the hospital in Calgary, WorkSafe came and visited, and they basically said everything's taken care of, and there was never any pressure to go back to work. It was like, you know what, when you're ready, you come talk to us, and we'll work through what you need, and you'll be able to get back to work when you want. And now that I look back, I'm glad that they came up with a plan for me. They really looked out for my well-being, and I didn't see that at first, and now I'm in the situation I am. I do see that was a big part of coming back to work. The first step was going to work. I had no idea where my place would be at Aero. I just knew I had to come and start. And when one of the general foremans retired, it was like, that's the role I need to go, because I still get to be a part of the field, and I still get to be a part of the office, and I thought that was the best fit.
I see Mike now, 3 years later, when he comes home from work, and he feels like, yeah, Aero needs me. If I don't come tomorrow, things will not work properly. I need to be there.
if I was talking to an injured worker that's stuck in a position where they don't know where they want to go, is don't be afraid to try and don't be afraid to fail. You're going to fail. You're not going to get it every time. But if you keep trying, eventually, if you're patient, you will get there and you will find something that you can feel happy with yourself and get back to work and enjoy your life. You know, and I'd rather be happy than be miserable. And that's a huge thing to my belief in life and how I should live.
I'm really proud of Mike. Really proud. I know there was some days where were long days. I worried for him, but I'm really proud of him. Yeah, he hasn't ceased to amaze me yet.
You need to find that no matter what it is, and I found that, and now I'm back to where I was before the accident, where I enjoy my life. I'm happy. You know, I love my family and I love going to work.
Very powerful, and I hope ties into the theme of today and taking what we all are so passionate about, taking it to the personal level, and Mike certainly exemplifies that after his very tragic injury. Now we're going to move to a shorter video, 2 or 3 minutes. About 2 weeks ago, Mike came to Richmond, to where we have our head office, and we had a chat with them, and they wanted to thank some of our staff and share with us their experience. And they were agreeable to us videoing that discussion. So now we're going to hear from Mike Honeyman some months after the accident and just hear from the employer what the experience was like.
When this kind of thing happens, it's overwhelming on every level. You've got an investigation going on. You've got, you know, a guy that I didn't know if he was going to live or die. You've got a bunch of people that are hurting. You've got kids that are questioning being in the trade. The community has a lot of questions, and some of those questions are really difficult to answer. So it was a challenge just to kind of maintain your sanity and your focus. It's scary to think that somebody you love might die, and it's scary to think that you might lose the business, which is going to affect everybody else there, and they're looking to you for, you know, support and encouragement in a time when it's just not a very encouraging time. There's nothing good about that. It was just horrific on every level. When Mike was hurt, I was the safety coordinator for the company, and I thought I nailed it. I thought I was awesome, actually. I wrote our occupational health and safety manual. Every time we did an audit on anything, it always was great. We had everything in there. The book was this thick. The Joint Health and Safety Committee had a book that was this thick. It was great. You know, I spent more than a year writing that. And when we got through the investigation, nailed the paperwork end of it. It was deadly. I had 1,500 pages of stuff, and like, good job. But what did that do for Mike? Nothing. I never spent 10 seconds with Mike one-on-one before that saying safety really is at the core of everything, right? I never had that personal connection where I could have said to Mike that nothing is more important than you going home safe at the end of the day. All the paperwork, none of that matters if you don't actually portray that that is what's important. And that's actually a big regret that I have, and a lot of guilt that I carry, is that I didn't even know Mike before the accident. We were acquaintances. But if I was going to tell anything to an employer, it would be really think about what it is that you're doing and what you're telling people, because if it doesn't start with the true belief that, you know, that is really what you believe in, it doesn't matter at all. And that was a tough pill to swallow, and it still is.
So thanks for allowing us to show that. It's quite moving, and for me personally, and for those of us at WorkSafe who saw that and worked with Mike and Mike over the last number of months, it's been quite an experience. And they asked if we could help share their messages with various audiences as we meet with groups like yourself. So thank you very much. And last slide, and I just wanted to say a word of thanks, of course, to the organizers, a fabulous day, but also to Don and the team that has put forth the recommendations. WorkSafeBC has seen those, reviewed those. We're very supportive of them, and thank you, and keep up the great work. Thanks very much.
I've had the honor several times of presenting some industry safety awards to well-deserving people, and it's recognition from their peers. We ask for nominations for these awards from the industry, and each year, you know, as I look at the people who have received them, it's a very dedicated group of individuals, and the two individuals who will be receiving those rewards this year are also very dedicated. I'm going to ask both individuals to come up here at the same time, but let me just give a little bit of the background on the award. Most Valuable Player of the Year award. It's an award that's given out annually to somebody who has contributed for a while to safety, but specifically within the year has really taken some extra efforts to make some key things occur for the industry. This year's recipient of the Most Valuable Player of the Year award will be Don Banasky. I know Don is here. Don, would you come up at this point in time? I'm going to make them stand up on the stage while I say some good things about them. The Carrie White Memorial Lifetime Achievement Award. This award is given out to an individual who has, throughout their career and for an extended period of time, really dedicated themselves to improving safety throughout the industry. It's given in memorial of Carrie White. Carrie White was a longtime industry individual, worked a lengthy career with WorkSafe, was one of the first safety advocates after his WorkSafe career for the BC Forest Safety Council, and this award is given to individuals who are showing that same kind of lifetime dedication. And this year's recipient of the Carrie White Memorial Award will be Chris Akehurst. Chris, would you please come up? Let me give you a little bit of background, and most of you who know me know that I don't use notes typically for speaking, but I'm going to in these cases because the comments that I'm about to share with you are coming from their peers in the industry, from the people who put together the nominations for the award, and then from folks that they work with. So first, for Don. Don has had a long commitment to safety. It has not only been at the top of his list with the companies he has worked for, but he has volunteered his services to help others improve their safety programs. In 1994, Don joined Timber West Forest Corporation and worked as a chokerman, rigging slinger, hook tender, and a mechanical processor operator. In 2002, along with Brian Gregson, he launched Falltech Logging, which provided mechanical falling and bunching services of 1 million cubic meters a year. At that time, he also began Don Banasky Logging Consultants, which focused on project management, safety, and systems development. Falltech was purchased by the Gregson Group, and Don continues to provide consulting and management services to both companies. He's involved in many capacities, including safety implementation. Serves as a vice president of the Truck Loggers Association, sits on numerous committees, including Steep Slope Advisory Committee, Incident Investigation Advisory Committee, Safety Training and Industrial Relations Committee, and various other safety committees in the hopes to make a difference in the forest industry in BC and abroad. And I'm going to touch on that and abroad in a moment. In 2013, Don has been part of the working team overhauling SAFE certification into an updated, industry-owned certification system to reduce fatalities and serious injuries in the industry. As a result of Don's safety and leadership experience, Don has been asked in 2013 to visit and speak to groups in the United Kingdom and New Zealand on integrating safety, quality, and production in forestry contracting operations. Don represents the Truck Loggers Association and British Columbia Forestry well on these visits. I was in the UK with Don. They had asked, could we have a contractor come over who was very close to the whole transition that British Columbia had gone through. We spoke that week to over 800 individuals in separate meetings all across the country. Those meetings were scheduled to start at 7:30 and be over by 9:30. At 9:30, Don was doing a key part of the presentation. The contractors had so many questions that the facilitator each night said, you could go home now. And out of groups of up to 160, 2 or 3 people left at that time. The main group would end up breaking up reluctantly about 10:30, and each night people stayed till after 11 o'clock talking to Don to pick his brain on what we were doing here. And Don just hung through it all. By the way, for fatigue management, they knew that we were going to be having a long schedule. The organizers actually arranged for 2 sponsoring companies to give us drivers during the day so that we would not drive from town to town tired. That was a key learning for me. So that's Don. Congratulations, Don. And I have the award here. Thank you. Oh, that's... All right, thank you. You can stay while we do Chris, since you guys do know each other as well. Some of the characteristics of this award, the Kerry White Memorial Award, is that the individual has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to improving safety awareness, expanding safety knowledge, developing safety skills at ground level, and building a lasting culture of safety amongst BC's forest workers. This individual is known for being a teacher of safety, a trainer, an instructor, a mentor, someone who goes the extra mile to help others reach their safety goals. Chris is one of the long-term people in tree planting in British Columbia. He planted his first tree in 1975 and helped turn the industry into what it is today. Since taking ownership of A&G Reforestation in 1984, Chris has been a strong advocate for high employment standards and industry best practices. He has played a lead role in developing safety and training initiatives for the BC forest industry through his ongoing work with the Western Silviculture Contractors Association in the development of the Safe Silviculture Program. With Chris's leadership, silviculture was the sector of the industry that improved its injury rate the fastest of any sector of our industry. Quite an accomplishment. Chris also serves as an alternate director on the BC Forest Safety Council. Some of the work Chris has supported has created the Resource Road Driving Training, ATV Training, Supervisor, and Power Saw Training courses, pulling together resources to reduce musculoskeletal injuries and improve emergency response to remote locations, not only for silviculture, but working on that issue for all workers in forestry in the province. Chris's dedication to safety in the silviculture sector and more broadly in the industry is tireless and unrelenting. I personally can attest to the amount of volunteer time that Chris has put in. He is running a small business much the same as many of the rest of you in the room, and he does a lot of this in, quote, his spare time, which all of you know doesn't exist for small business owners. The number of hours he has taken away from his own work to promote and advocate safety over the past decade is a true indicator of his absolute determination to see forest industry injuries and fatalities get to zero. Chris, Thank you. So I'm going to do this officially here. All right. All right, all set? And you're going to say a few words if I could. Yeah, so Chris and Don are both going to say a few words, please.
Thanks, Reynold. First off, I'd like to acknowledge the Copcan Contracting and Falltech Logging and the Gregson family specifically for giving me the resources and the time away from the business to participate in all these functions, committees, and so on. Yeah, it's been a great experience. I've got a couple of things that I'd like to talk about. I mean, first off, look at the room here today. We're obviously here for one purpose, and it's to keep our workers, our friends, our families, our loved ones safe. I mean, because we're all interconnected in some way with someone in the room here. And there's a lot of family operations. There's a lot of coworkers who've worked together for a long time, a lot of industry, a lot of contractors. It's an amazing process to see this this day just evolve from 100 people to 450 today. Some of the things that I spoke about on my tours, or tour, soon to be second tour, are communication. We think, let's get back to the basics and get the message to the ground. We hear that quite often these days. The paperwork's not working, all these things. Well, we have the systems, we have the support of the council, which is run by industry. Let's get back to the basics. Well, look at it. Communications is the basics. We've never had it. We're loggers, we're rough, tough operators, we're all these things. We're not good communicators. So take the time to look at the person beside you, who's your friend, your coworker, a family mate, a father, a husband, wife, and acknowledge that person as an individual, because you sure as hell don't want that person to get injured if you can have a chance to make a difference in that. Speak up for safety, speak up for your coworkers, and be heard. And I've got a quick little story here, a couple seconds. So I'm up here being a leader, and obviously I'm the only one that voted, so, So with that being said, I was traveling yesterday, and I'm a big advocate of situational awareness, being aware of what you're doing, when you're doing it, as well as paying attention to your coworkers. I promote this endlessly. Last night I'm taking the kids skating with my wife. We're a little bit late. Really didn't think that was a concern. Cruising, having a conversation, going with the flow, entering Ladysmith. And I got somebody else was paying attention for me, a real leader in safety, the policeman that pulled me over for speeding. And, it was, I didn't get mad. I didn't have a clue how fast I was going. I was going with the flow. I was being a follower instead of a leader. So what that guy did for me last night was acknowledged, hey, nobody's perfect. We might think we are. Nobody has the perfect system. Just acknowledge when you're wrong and make a change. So on the way home, I clicked my cruise control. That way, it's a system, and I managed my speed. I had some situational awareness. I'm not going to rely on that, but it's a tool to help me achieve my goal of getting home as safe as I can, so especially with my family in the car. But just look after each other, and I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
It's a true honor to get this award. Unlike Art Hister, I've never spoken to half as many people as this before. But I'd like to thank Reynold and everyone who nominated me. But what I would like to do is, this is not just my award. There's a whole group of people who worked with me in the Silviculture Advisory Committee. We formed ourselves probably 10 years ago, when safety first became an issue in our industry. And there's one man in particular who's done an awful lot of work, and without him, I wouldn't be up here getting this award. So John Betts has been kind of the inspiration following my dogged determination to make this work. And also, there's always someone we leave behind when we go out and work in the bush. And my wife has brought up all our kids when I've been working in the bush. And I'm going to another damn SAC meeting, and how come you volunteer so much, right? So there's two people who also particularly share this award. I'd also like to think that it's part of some of the recognition of silviculture. Our forest industry has been dominated by the falling side, and that's the biggest number of injuries and the most fatalities. But we feel in silviculture that we also have a big safety challenge ahead of us, and too often I think we've been forgotten. When I started in 75, you know, our trucks wouldn't make it up the hill. Our camp was a bivouac tent on the west coast of the island where the snow and the rain blew through. But we were all young together and we were invincible. And we've changed a lot since then. And, you know, as I get to my grand old age, you kind of figure that we want to actually bring up the next generation with not so much luck, but with a lot more planning than we did it in those days. When you have your own kids out there and friends' kids working for me, that's when it really hits home that you got to have a proper system and you got to be good at it. Okay, so I think those are the things, and I would encourage you all to, you know, we started out in 2003 with an injury rate. We saw the graph from Ian Munro, where he started at 7 and he went to 2. Silviculture was at 16 when we started. Now we've only got it down to, I think it's 8 or 9 now. I'm never quite sure what year the stats come out, but we have an awful lot of musculoskeletal injuries, and we still haven't solved that problem. And we also have a workforce you guys have logging challenges. In our industry, my company goes from 0 employees in April 15th to 120 on May the 1st. And by July the 15th, I'm down to about 10 again. And maybe 60% of those are returnees. So we have to gear everybody up, train everybody, and get them out there. And there are serious challenges, especially nowadays in driving and ATVs and all that kind of stuff. So I think in honor of this, not in honor of this award, but it's nice that I have a little chance to talk to you. I'd like to work with some of the licensees that are here and some of the WorkSafe, that let's get systems that we can work together in, and we can work together to promote the safety in the industry. Thank you.